Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the movie ranker, and we are on Ranker Live episode 2. We're ranking every Wes Anderson movie from worst to best, and I'm not alone. I'm joined by FilmKid. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing great. FilmKid is another YouTuber. He does movie reviews, rankings, all that stuff. A link to his channel is in the description of this video. Go give him a sub. And yeah, Wes Anderson, this was all first time watches for me. So beware, my ranking may not look like a regular fan's ranking, but Film Kid is much more of a Wes Anderson fan, so he might balance things out.
Yeah, I do have one hot take that I know a lot of
Mm.
people will not agree with, but the
Well, that
rest of his films I think I'm in the majority minority with.
yeah, well, that just makes things more interesting. Hot takes. 12 movies here. So yeah, his first one was in '96, and his latest one was a Netflix movie from this year. It's more an anthology. So yeah, who do you want to kick things off? Me or you? You get the choice.
Uh, you can go first.
Right on. So for me at number 12 in last place, I have to go with the French Dispatch. My number 11 and number 12 are kind of interchangeable, but these are definitely my least favorite. I enjoy pretty much everything after this, but yeah, the French Dispatch, it's an anthology film that uses an interesting concept actually with the journals and the newspaper. I thought that was really interesting, and how we have different news clippings and the writers of them all involved in this anthology. I
That
thought
was
that was
very
pretty neat.
unique.
Yeah, very unique, very neat. I'm surprised no one else kind of thought of that for an anthology before. But everything else aside from the style and that concept, the stories just didn't work for me. The three stories, one of them being a painter in prison, which was
That
probably
was my
my
favorite.
my favorite as well. I just found it was a little underwhelming the way they wrapped that story up a little bit. You got the school riots and stuff in the second one, which it's kind of too quick, I found, and kind of offbeat, but interesting enough. And the last one being the kid getting kidnapped, the police kid, cops kid. Uh, None of them did a whole lot for me, even though I did enjoy the painting one quite a bit, but the other two not so much. So pretty weak anthology, if you ask me. Solid cast like always, but yeah, the movie just didn't really work for me.
All right. So my number 12 is the Darjeeling Limited. Um, I think the film it's only like 90 something minutes. Yeah, it feels like one of his slowest films.
Hmm.
It's his second time doing this type of story where you have this dysfunctional family meeting up after a while and them basically doing something together for 90 minutes. And I think the other film that he does that in is much better than this. Even though I watched this before that other film, I think it was pretty poorly executed. It does have great performances. All three of the main leads are very good in the film. It definitely has its moments here and there. I think all the parts while they're on the train is solidly entertaining with the dialogue. And I also really like the scene where they're just running onto the train because they're about to miss it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it really didn't work for me. I didn't find it to be that entertaining, and I really don't have much to say about this movie besides saying that it's easily my least favorite and his weak spot in his filmography.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I see a lot of people either loving it or it's their least favorite. You know,
Yeah.
there's like no one in the middle on this one. For me, at number 11 is Asteroid City. Um, I didn't know what to think going into this one. It does have one of the best casts you could ever have. I mean, it's huge. Everybody from Bryan Cranston to Bill Murray, they're all here, and it's great.
Tom
Or,
Hanks.
or Tom Hanks, yeah. Bill Murray's not in this one, I don't think, is he?
He might be, but he plays a small
Yeah,
role.
small. There's so many small roles in there. It's hard to remember. There's like Scarlett Johansson,
There's
even Margot
Margot
Robbie.
Robbie.
Yeah, Margot
Like
Robbie
that was
even.
shocking.
Yeah. So yeah, cast is great and everything. It's just the story. I don't know. I like that it's like a television program within like a play within a play. Like, you know,
Yeah.
he did this kind of thing before being pretty meta with things. And the thing is, it's like nothing really makes sense, but I guess that's kind of the point, you know? Like with the alien coming down and everything, you don't get any real
The stop motion there was phenomenal, though.
yeah. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of explanations going on, if that makes any sense. And even the actors themselves, the characters are like, why are we doing this? Like, you know, and he has to go ask the director, like, what's this mean? And he's like, I don't know. But so I guess it's kind of the point, but at the same time, it just didn't really captivate me that much. So it was visually stunning. It was nice, bright colors, very bright film, but one of my least favorites once again. This and The French Dispatch really weren't for me, but everything else is really much higher up for me.
Yeah, well, I have the same 11 spot as you. Number 11 is Asteroid City. That might be the only film that we agree with on this list, but yeah, pretty much all you said. I think the movie tries way too much on the visuals than it does the actual
Mhm,
story. And it also, once again, tries to focus on this star-studded cast so much to the point where it starts to lack some of the charm as some of his um other films.
mhm.
But yeah, I pretty much agree with all you said. It definitely has some very interesting casting in this movie, with its Steve Carell, Tom Hanks,
True, yeah.
Scarlett Johansson, and then of course you have his standard castings with
Mhm.
uh I forget his name, but
Jason Schwartzman?
yeah,
Yeah,
he was pretty much in like 90% of his films.
yeah.
But yeah, this one just wasn't for me at all. Once again, I've been really wanting to give it a rewatch. Since I've watched it, since I want to see if it holds up, but just didn't captivate me as much as his other films. And as I said, I think this film focused on way too much with the visuals than it does the actual
Mhm.
plot.
I feel like this and The French Dispatch kinda go more style over substance a
Yeah,
little bit, and that's probably why they're lower on my list. Sup, Chad? Chud's Corner, and we got Kyle in the house. Flet's movie and pop culture. Sup, guys?
hello.
Okay, moving on. Number 10, I got the Darjeeling Limited. Even a weird title, eh? It's like hard to remember, weird name.
It's also
But
hard to pronounce.
yeah, it's just such a thin plot. There's really not a lot there. It's the themes are there and everything, the social commentary, but the story itself, it's literally just these three brothers trying to bond and spell brotherhood, right?
Yeah,
They're in India, but I feel like it could have been used better, India, like to move the story forward and that and make some funny scenarios with them not being from this country and all that. It's kind of wasted a bit. But yeah, the dialogue scenes are great. I think the three brothers are fun to watch and how they each deal with grief in different ways. Like one brother's always trying to run away, so they have to hide his passport and everything. Owen Wilson's character, he's very controlling and he wants to be like the leader. It's just very interesting. And the Adrian Brody's character wearing his father's prescription glasses, so he can barely see out of them, but he like wants the world to be a blur at this point. So there is some interesting things here, but I kind of agree with you where it was handled better in the Royal Tenenbaums when it's talking about family
yeah.
reuniting. And yeah, there were some funny moments. The I like the scene where they get lost on the train, or the train gets lost. I mean, like, how can a train get lost? It's on tracks. That made me chuckle. And there's a few funny moments, but yeah, the pacing's pretty bad just because there's nothing really happening aside from their dialogue scenes. So yeah, that's why this one's lower. I do like the moment where they're shooting their luggage when they're trying to get on the train at
Yeah.
the end. It's like showing them throwing away their baggage and moving on. But yeah, it's just such a thin plot.
Yeah, my number 10 is this is I just remember this is probably a hot take, but Isle of Dogs.
Oh, okay.
Um one after like Fantastic Mr. Fox did really well, of course Wes Anderson wanted to add on more to his stop motion films. Um and with that his next film was Isle of Dogs. Wasn't for me. It's just there's so much that lacked in this film, whether it's the plot that was intriguing and was interesting on a hook, don't think was as well executed in the actual film. has once again a stacked cast. Bryan
Mhm.
Cranston, Jeff Goldblum, Bill Murray, and a whole bunch of other people. Um, which I thought they all did very well voice acting. But I think this one just lacked the charm of Fantastic Mr. Fox. And it just wasn't my favorite of his. The stop motion looks phenomenal. I mean, like always in all four of his films that use stop motion,
Mm.
with Mr. Fox, this, Asteroid City, and the Rat in the Rat Catcher. Um, I think they all look phenomenal, but yeah, I just wasn't as crazy about this film, and it's pretty low on my list.
Did you notice the title? I It sounds like I Love Dogs. Isle of Dogs. I thought that was pretty clever. I didn't pick that up right away.
I
Until I went
never
this
picked it up till
until
you
I went
mentioned
this
it.
once you say it out loud, you kinda notice it. You're like, "Whoa, it sounds like I Love Dogs," which definitely does after watching this movie.
Yeah.
So, okay, don't worry, there'll be more hot takes. At number 9, okay, we're getting into the better films, a little bit better there. The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. It's even that's
Zissou.
a weird name, right? An interesting little homage, kind of tribute to Cousteau and his aquatic voyages. Uh, I like the character Steve a lot. I think he's really good, really well written. He's someone who's kind of seen as a has been now. He's kind of getting all washed up. He's on his last big adventure and he's kind of worried about his legacy. He has a lot going on in this film. He runs into his ex-wife. He runs into a kid that may be his. Well, not a kid anymore. It could be his kid. I mean, it's played by Owen Wilson. Uh, and then he ends up dying later in the film. He has to deal with that. There's so much going on here. And plus, the grief over losing his friend before the film started, right? When he gets killed by the sharks. So that character definitely goes through a lot in this film. And he just played by Bill Murray so well. You really get all the Murray, the things the actor does with his charisma and everything. His charm really comes off with this
Yep.
character. But you also see the other side of him too, right? His trauma side. So I really like him. The surrounding cast really lighten things up too. William Dafoe is really funny with his
He's
German
probably my
accent.
favorite character in this movie.
Yeah, he's pretty great. Ned, his son, he's okay.
Jeff Goldblum.
Kate Blanchette's pretty good too, as the pregnant woman. And yeah, Jeff Goldblum, I thought he was really funny as well. It's
Kind of
just
playing a rival.
yeah, he is. And I like the whole scene where he finds them tied up to the table at the table there when they're playing poker with the pirates. All the pirate scenes are awesome. Really fun to watch. It's just I thought the movie dragged a little bit at times. It was a little longer. Uh, could have been tightened up just a bit. I thought it was a weird choice to use the stop motion or claymation, whatever they use for like the fish and stuff. That was a
Yeah.
an odd choice for this movie. I know these movies don't have the biggest budget or whatnot, but still, the set's really cool. I like when it shows the boat and all the different bunks and everything. That was
I mean, no
cool.
matter what, a Wes Anderson set is going to look
Yeah,
really good.
the sets and the cinematography are great. Just I found the story could have been tightened up just a bit. The music didn't work for me. All the David Bowie songs in a different language there on acoustic. I thought that could have been done better, but it's an okay film. Definitely better than the ones we talked about so far.
Yeah. So my number 9 is The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and Three More. Now, a lot of you guys probably don't know what this is. It's a Netflix film that came out this year, and it's basically Wes Anderson's four short films from last year put into one 90-minute long anthology. And I definitely enjoyed this. I think it's much better from the past movies that I've talked about. Um, but yeah, I think the wonderful story of Henry Sugar is really interesting. I like the way how it tells this Benjamin Button esque story about this man who can literally see with his entire face covered. I think Dev Patel in that short is hilarious and phenomenal. Something I liked about all the shorts in this is how like it honestly feels like that you're reading a book that's like
Right.
told with like there's like a whole bunch of fourth wall breaking, and literally half of the thing is a character looking at you and saying he said blah blah blah, she said blah blah
Mhm.
blah, and then also in the same way he'll like quickly turn around and say something to the characters and they'll do something that's a part of the story. That's something I really liked. The Swan, which I'm pretty sure was the second one, was my
Mhm.
personal least favorite. Think it's pretty forgettable. And it's just I'll just say it's kind of boring. Doesn't have a lot going for it. Feels pretty bland at moments. I really like the Rat Catcher. I think that told a very unique and interesting story about this guy who catches rats. Portrayed perform perfectly by Ralph Fiennes.
Mhm.
Um, and then Poison was really good. I thought that was very thrilling and kept you on the edge of your seat most of the time. Um, it was, I personally, even though Benedict Cumberbatch was the main character in that segment, he wasn't really doing anything half of the time, but I'll just give him props for standing still during
Right.
all this dialogue. Like, I could never do that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought this was a solid anthology film. I don't think it's his best anthology that he's made, but it was entertaining. It was short. It was sweet, and I enjoyed it.
Cool. And you know what? That's also my next one. Number 8 is the wonderful. Is it the wonderful story? Yeah, the wonderful story of Henry Sugar and three more. Um, Pretty much agree with most of what you said. I thought all four stories were solid enough, but my favorite was Henry Sugar, and the last one, the Poison. The Poison was just so full of tension. Like you said,
Yeah,
the edge of your seat. You're just like, is he gonna get bit by the snake? Like, what's going to go on? Uh, but yeah, the Henry Sugar one was just so unique and original. Just really
I mean,
different
it won
storytelling.
Best Short Film at the Oscars of
Well, there you
2023.
go. Deservedly so, I guess. And yeah, it's really the style and the narration that sells this for me. This anthology is
Yeah,
just so cool. It, like you said, audiobook earlier, and that's what I thought of.
yeah.
It sounds like you're like listening to a story instead of visualizing, like watching it. And yeah, just how each character narrates their own sections, and like you said, turning and everything was so
Yeah.
great. One thing about the Swan I did like was the narrator, how he was switching his voices for when he was doing the other kids. I thought that was
That's what I was
hilarious.
kind of mentioning when he turned around and stuff, like how
Yeah,
they'll completely switch their mood.
but yeah, surprising anthology because almost every anthology you watch, there's always gonna be a bad story, but this one, pretty solid all around.
I mean, we talked about this before the stream, but like, it definitely feels like Henry Sugar overwhelms all the
Sure.
other three segments because it's 40 minutes long. The other three are like 17,
Mhm.
15 minutes, somewhere in that range. And so those ones are pretty short and sweet. And Henry Sugar just is the one that feels like like you go there to watch Henry Sugar and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, plus we get three more.
Yeah, 3 quick ones. But at the same time, the Poison felt like it kinda worked as a short one, while the other 2 didn't work as much. They
I
coulda
I
used more time.
I felt like Poison was a good way to end off the anthology.
It was. Yeah. And the doctor was great in that one too.
Yeah. So my number eight, I think, is where we're at.
Yep.
Um, my number eight is Bottle Rocket. Um, I'm not sure. A lot of people just don't like this film. I don't know why. Maybe it's because like if this is not your first Wes Anderson film, it was personally one of my first Wes. I think it was the fourth one that I watched of his. Um, but this film is just like it's his first ever. It's his first feature, and so
Mm,
you really see him starting some of his stylistic elements, but not fully going there. You more get that in was his second feature Tenenbaums?
Rushmore.
Okay, you more see that in Tenenbaums and Rushmore than you do
Mhm.
in this film. I think it's a very interesting take on a heist film.
Yeah.
It's it also has very good comedic elements. I wasn't expecting the stuff at like the little motel to actually be good, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
just it brought a comedic factor to the movie. Um, Owen Wilson and Is the other one Luke Wilson?
Luke, yeah.
Yeah. Um, those two are great as the two main leads, and I forget the other actor's name, but the third one who tags along
Mhm.
with them was also great, and he adds on to the comedic factor of the three. Um, I love the scene, which this is probably the most iconic scene from the film, where they're just testing the guns
Yeah.
out. Um, but like that for some reason didn't feel Wes Anderson at all. This entire film didn't really feel like Wes Anderson.
No. It feels more Tarantino, I feel, just less violent.
Yeah, and without all the language.
Yeah.
Um,
Isn't it funny that Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson never played brothers in any of these movies, but they're always like together?
I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this film. I thought it told a solid story, and as I said, it definitely is completely different from any other film in this filmography.
No doubt. Number 7, where I'm at Rushmore for number 7. A really funny movie, a really weird movie, kind of odd storylines and scenarios that happen. Like this high school student ends up becoming friends with Bill Murray, this old man. It's kind of odd. And then they start fighting over the first grade teacher. They're both in love with her. Makes for some great comedy, that's for sure. Especially like when they're both trying to get back at each other, like prank wars in like the middle
Yeah,
of the film. That's an awesome part of the film. But the thing holding this one back for me a little bit was Jason Schwartzman's character, the main guy. I'm blanking right now.
I
Uh,
forget his name.
Max Fisher. Yeah, him. I just don't think he's a very likable character. I don't know. He's kind of obnoxious. I found might be just me, but I don't know. I had a hard time rooting for him, or not even rooting for him, but just I don't know. Every time he was on screen, I just something bothered me about him. I'm glad he kind of redeemed himself, that actor, in some of his other films, but in this one, I don't know, something about him, about the character. I mean, but yeah, a pretty funny movie. I feel like the teacher kind of gave the kid a little bit too many chances. But aside from that, a decent film. Definitely starting to show more Wes Anderson style in this one with the music and whatnot. But yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So my number six is Rushmore. Um, very stylistic film. Definitely starts showing the Wes Andersonisms that you see in other films, but once again, doesn't fully get there. We talked about this at the beginning of the stream, or a little bit before the stream started. But yeah, I feel like he really started to get stylistic, like really stylistic at Life Aquatic.
Mhm.
Um, but this one was very interesting. I remember thinking, and this was one of the reasons why it held me back, is that it's just so weird.
It is.
Like a story about a boy falling in love with a teacher while also being friends with an older man is just such a weird story.
Mhm.
But in the same way, I feel like Wes executes it very maturely. If that makes sense.
True. Yeah.
I feel like if any other director tried to tackle this topic, um, it would have been done like a dumb, raunchy comedy
Most likely. Yeah.
where Wes made it an interesting
He makes it a little
character
more
study.
sophisticated, I guess.
Yeah. But all the other stuff that I would have to say was pretty much what you said about it. It's an entertaining film. Not one that I'm necessarily dying to go back and rewatch just because how weird it is. But yeah, it's definitely not a bad film.
Yeah, it's just the Max character I find he's just hard to relate to, and not talking about him falling in love with the teacher, none, just his personalities and whatnot.
Yeah.
All right, I guess this is my hot take. Even though these movies were getting closer to the top here, but at number 6, we got the fan favorite, The Grand Budapest Hotel. Now,
No.
I feel like this movie is the movie that's gonna go up the most on rewatch because I'm already, like, kinda itching to rewatch it. Like, it's already got me wanting to go back, right? It's just a lot to
Yeah.
take in on your first listen first watch, I find. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff thrown at you visually. The colors just really pop in this one. The story, I really like the main lead in here, Gustav. Was it Ralph
Yeah.
Fiennes? I love him in The Menu too. That's where I
I
recognize
haven't
him
seen
from.
that yet.
Definitely worth checking out. He's amazing in there, just as good as in here, I feel. Uh, but yeah, I just love his relationship he forms with Zero and their friendship throughout the film, and how Gustav's like living this illusion that he's like kind of higher class, even though he's clearly not. But this the way he talks, like he comes off more sophisticated, the way he has
Yeah.
respect at the hotel and everything, and sleeping with these older women, and they respect him too. So he's just such an interesting character and all the different scenarios he gets himself into, especially when he's in prison and whatnot. And he starts treating the prisoners like he's taking care of them too, right? Bringing around the food and everything. It just makes for a really interesting watch. Like I said, this is one I feel every time I go back to it, I'm going to enjoy it more and more. Um, Again, it's just I didn't know what I was getting myself into getting into this with.
Yeah.
It's basically a story told by an author, told by this guy, his
Yeah.
backstory. So again, it's a story within a story, and how I like how when one person's telling it, or at the start you see the hotel, and once you get another person's perspective, the hotel already changes a bit. So depending on who's telling the story, the fantasy gets distorted a bit. And I feel like that's why the action scenes are kind of goofy. Like, when
Yeah.
the whole skiing scene and all that, as great as they are, the effects and the way it's shot is done in a very goofy way. But I feel like that's because you're like, in a way, they're reminiscent on a crazy event that took place, right? So when you try to retell a story, you always kind of make it more crazier than what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just really enjoyed everything about this, from the cinematography to the acting. Did a really good job on all fronts. Like I said, it might be a hot take, but I really do enjoy this movie and all the ones above this.
So my number 6 is The French Dispatch.
Cool.
Um, I really like this movie. I don't think there's a single bad segment. I think the one with Jeffrey Wright as the author, the writer, is easily my least favorite out of all of them. Um, but yeah, I really like the painting one. I do think it drags on a little long and doesn't give enough time for the other two segments. Um, but yeah, it's a fairly entertaining film. It's on the shorter side. It's either in the 90 to 100-minute category. Um, I think this film has probably one of his most interesting castings, with Benicio del Toro and Timothy Chalamet and Jeffrey Wright. All just felt a little bit strange, especially the Benicio del Toro and Timothy Chalamet. I knew that Timothy Chalamet was in this movie, but it's still very strange that he's in a Wes Anderson movie. Um, it's a good film. I enjoyed it. But it's also kind of forgettable. I mean, I don't really remember anthologies as much as I do regular films, because they're tackling like multiple different stories in the span of like 90 minutes. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this film. I do think it's not as good as my top 5, and it couldn't quite crack into my top 5, but I still think it's a fairly solid movie.
Cool. And while all the stories are not super connected, I do feel like people being suppressed is like one of the big things here, with the guy being in
Yeah.
prison. uh and art's his only way out, like, kind of thing. The riots, the school riots, they're fighting for rights, like, it's all kind of suppression
It
and
has a
stuff like that,
political aspect.
right? Reaching the top 5. Wow. At my number 5, I have the Royal Tenenbaums. Now, as I stated earlier, I tried watching this movie back in 2001 when it came out. I was like 10, and it just, I don't know, I wasn't expecting this type of movie, especially seeing the cast. I thought it was going to be a more wild comedy or something like that. So I ended up turning it off like 20 minutes in. But I'm glad I returned this many years later, like 20 some years later, because yeah, I really did enjoy this movie. It does a really good job at dealing with a lot of characters, you know, for the runtime and the amount of characters and that they have to deal with. They all get their own
Story.
story arc or whatnot. Like, I love Gene Hackman as Royal. He is so funny in this. I thought he's hilarious, and he just wants the love from his family, even though he's not doing the best things to acquire that, pretending to be dying. One line I love is when he meets his grandkids through the fence. He says about their mother. She was a tragically attractive woman, or something like that. It made me laugh so much. But yeah,
Is
Gene
this the
Hackman.
is
What's
this
that?
the only Wes Anderson film that Ben Stiller is in?
I think so, and I was expecting him to be in the more when I was going through his filmography because I
Because
knew he
like
was in
he's
this one.
such good friends with Owen Wilson, and so like
Right.
you would expect him to be in more of Wes's
Yeah,
films with the amount of films that Owen Wilson is in.
yeah, they're part of the Rat Pack, the both of them. So if you look up Rat Pack, they have like all these movies together. It's almost like this own little universe with Adam Sandler and all them. But yeah, great casting. What's her name? Gwyneth
Paltrow,
Paltrow. Friggin', I think besides Gene Hackman, I think she's probably my favorite character of Margot. She's just plays it so good. And I like how all these kids were like these prodigies and were geniuses and that when they were kids, but as they grew up, things changed and
especially Gwyneth Paltrow.
yeah, and their lives didn't become what you expected them to be. Uh, you got Ben Stiller, losing his wife and being like overprotective about safety and everything, and him really not connecting with his father after everything they went through. It's, and you get the great emotional scene with him at the end. Uh, Weird little storyline with Luke Wilson's character and Gwyneth, where brother and sister in love, even though she's adopted, but
Which
still,
was
it's
the
kind of
only
weird.
reason that didn't make it weirder.
Yeah, if they were, that would have been too much. But yeah, I kind of get where he was coming from because she was adopted, so she never felt like she was really part of the family. She was never treated like it, except for her brother was the only one who kind of really treated her like a friend.
I love the
And
scene with the bird with Luke Wilson on the top of the
on the
building and the
roof,
bird. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. There's just so many great scenes. Him in the bathroom too is a really dark scene,
yeah,
but the movie's able to handle tones really well and come in and out of comedic tones and dark tones without feeling jarring or nothing.
yeah,
So yeah, I think they just handled the drama really well and the characters in this one. And as we stated earlier, much better than his other film, The Darjeeling. So yeah, I really like this one.
yeah. So kicking off my top five at five, I have Moonrise Kingdom. This and number four are pretty much interchangeable. I, I mean, the film is interesting. It has the interesting topic of young boy runs away with young girl and entire town tries to find them, and I'm like, to be honest, if this happened in real life, I don't think it would be that much of a big deal. Like, I get the town is small and everything, but like still, it also doesn't really make sense of how in like the radius of this, there's like two completely different scout camps.
True.
Uh, Edward Norton in this film is great as the scoutmaster. He's probably my
Mhm.
favorite character in this film. He's hilarious. Any
Yeah.
scene where he's taking in charge of the kids has any like comedic elements to it, and it's very funny. Um I do feel like the little rainstorm thing at the end of the movie just felt very random, and it was just kind of an excuse to get like an emotional ending out of the film.
Mhm.
Bruce Willis in this was kind of shocking. They
It's true. Yeah.
playing the like town police officer, I think. Um I think Bill Murray is great in this playing the dad. Um the main two actor and actress, so the I forget the kid's name, but the little boy scout and the girl, I thought they had solid chemistry together. They definitely tell an interesting story of these two characters running away together. um and yeah, I think it was solidly executed. A little weird, definitely has its moments where you're like, uh,
I
this
know what
is
you're
kind
talking
of
about.
pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
Especially for a PG-13 movie. They definitely, Wes likes to push his boundaries with PG-13 a lot of the time with this, and Asteroid City definitely shows what he can do with PG-13 and get away with. Um, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed this film, but it was a little weird to sneak into the top four.
Right. My number 4 is Bottle Rocket. I know this is pretty high for being his first film. A lot of people, like you said, don't seem to really care for this one, but I really enjoyed it. Definitely feels the least Wes Anderson out of all these films. Definitely stylistically, anyway. I feel like the dialogue and the way the story plays out is still, you can still see Wes Anderson in here. It's just style wise, you don't. Um, it's a little episodic the way it's told, where it's like you got the intro where we're learning about our characters and they're getting out of the institution and everything. And then when we get to the motel, it feels like we're in like episode 2. Like, it
Yeah,
feels like this could have been like a mini series or something more than a story, just the way it flows, I find. It's very episodic.
and then episode 3 is the heist.
Right. That's what it feels like. You're kind of like building up to that. But yeah, really funny heist movie. You get these criminals that don't know what they're doing, are not very good at their job, and it just makes it so hilarious. Owen Wilson's character, what's his name again? He has a funny name in here too. Dignan. He, I think this is his best character out of all these films. I really enjoy him in here. Well, he's good in Royal Tenenbaums too when he's all on mescaline and everything.
Yeah.
But he's just so stupid in this film, right from the start, where he's sneaking out of his room where they're free, that he doesn't even realize it. Just so many fun moments with him and how they screw up all their little heists. The bookstore heist is fun too, just for them like practicing. I love this scene where he's like telling them to get the money and they only have little bags. And then he's like, "Don't yell at me," and he's like, "All right." He's like, gets all polite. That's another reoccurring theme in all of these movies is when people do something like nasty or like obnoxious, if someone snaps at them, they get all polite, and that I noticed that's something that happens a lot in here. Or like when like in Isle of Dogs, for example, like when the group's about to fight and they're like, wait a minute, what if we should check this first before we fight? Like little scenarios like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed uh Bottle Rocket. I almost said Rocket Bottle. Bottle Rocket. It's actually a movie I've heard about for a long time. Most of these movies I didn't even know about, but this one I remember being in school and people talking about because it starred the Wilson brothers and everything. So I was always interested in checking it out. So I'm glad we got to do this ranking because it's pretty
Yeah.
funny. And the end heist is hilarious too. Everything goes wrong, the elevator and everything. So just yeah, really funny movie. I love how Dignan is so trying to be a leader again in control, where when he's trying to do his plan, when the other guy's playing with the gun, Bob or whatever, he's like, listen to me. He's just getting so fed up. It just makes me laugh. So
I watched
yeah,
this
this
movie, but
oh, I was
I
just gonna say
watched
this
it
movie
back.
I thought was better than what most people say.
I watched it back in January, and I still remember a good amount of scenes from it. And like
Hmm.
compared to a couple of his other films, I think it is very rememberable.
Right.
Even though it's not that stylistic.
Another funny part was when he's trying to meet the housekeeper and get to know her and he's just following her around every room. That made me laugh too. But yeah, Bottle Rocket, a surprise. Didn't
One of the
expect it to be in.
funniest parts about the movie is all the scenes where she can't understand what he's saying, and so he has to grab the translator.
Yeah. When they think that when the guy says I love you, but Owen Wilson doesn't know he's a translator. Pignan. Uh, so yeah, Bottle Rocket surprised me being this high.
All right, so my number four is this is probably my biggest hot take is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I really enjoyed this film. I think it is very unique. I like how you get to see this interesting story of submarines and these characters kind of going on this journey. The whole ending really threw me off, where they're under the water in the submarine
Mhm.
with all the fish, which looked bizarre.
Right. Done by Henry Selick for some odd reason.
Hmm.
Guy who made Nightmare on
I mean,
Before
he did
Christmas.
he did Coraline too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this film. I think it's entertaining, even though probably my biggest problem with the film is the pacing. It's all over the place. Um,
Right.
I really like Owen Wilson, Willem Dafoe, and Bill Murray. They're easily my favorite characters in this film, along with Jeff Goldblum. He adds a comedic factor to the film with
Mhm.
playing this rival to Bill Murray's character. There's a scene closer to the beginning of the film where they're at this like I forget what it is, but they're all dressed up in tuxedos and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it's when you first get introduced to Bill Murray and or when you first get introduced to Jeff Goldblum and he sees Bill Murray and their interaction in that scene had me dying. And a lot
Mhm.
of their interactions in this movie is hilarious because they're just arguing half of the time. Um Willem Dafoe plays a very interesting character in this film, to say the least. Um, but he's definitely fun and good to watch. I think my personal favorite character was Owen Wilson. I really like him. Good like he played a good character playing Bill Murray's son.
Mhm.
And he was also fairly funny. Everyone in this movie was pretty funny, no matter what moments they were at. Um, but yeah, a little bizarre at moments and had its pacing issues, but I definitely really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely goofy at times, but original. That's one thing. All these movies, like we said, whether they're good or bad, none of them are generic. I'll give them that. You know, not something you've seen before, anyway. Reaching my top three. Top three, I'm going with Moonrise Kingdom, a movie where I really went in with zero expectations. I looked at the poster and it didn't look like it was going to be for me, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought they handled the kid characters really well. They felt natural. They're obviously way more mature than your average kids, with the way they talk and everything. And that
I
one,
mean, it's the Wes Anderson movie.
yeah, so exactly. He always has a childish side to him, though. So it's funny that he made the kids this mature.
In all of
Uh,
his movies with kids, they he always makes them so mature, and even at some moments, like in Royal Tenenbaums, they're more mature than the adults.
right, exactly. It's interesting how that works out. But yeah, I just really like their chemistry together. Like you said, there's some scenes I was like, "Oh, that's kinda weird," but, for the most part, it really worked. I like the scene too where the scouts are trying to get them, they have to fight them off. That scene was really funny. But yeah, they're great. Edward Norton, like you said, kills it as the scoutmaster. I love the scene where he sits at the table and all the kids are gone. Keeps screwing up, keeps losing the kids.
And then he
Uh,
smokes a cigarette.
Yeah, it's like all the adults in this movie are dealing with so many problems and issues, and that the kids just want to run away from it all. Uh, but yeah, my biggest problem for this, the only reason why it was not higher, is I thought this was going to be the best when I was watching it, but the third act kind of, I don't know, goes off the
The whole
rails a little bit.
rainstorm.
Yeah, with the lightning strike and everything, I was like, what? Like you were doing so good up to this point. But aside from that third act, I feel like it's an incredibly solid movie. Funny, charming, sweet, cute, a little bit of everything. And you get like the camera shots when they're on the kids, it almost feels like a Kodak moment or something, which kind of brings your own like childhood nostalgia to the film. So this is really well made.
Yeah. So kicking off my top three, at number three I have Royal Tenenbaums. Um, there's nothing really to say about this movie that hasn't already been said by you or a whole bunch of other people. It's great. Owen Wilson, uh, Luke Wilson, or yeah, Luke Wilson, Gwyneth Paltrow, or Ben Stiller, and all the Danny Glover, Bill Murray, all the other people in this film are very good. It tells a very comedic but also extremely dark story. I think, I mean, my favorite character was Ben Stiller. I like the way he played this comedic but strict single dad
Mhm.
with these two kids that literally look up to him. Like they copy his style and everything.
Mhm.
But I think my favorite like performance and character to follow was Gwyneth Paltrow's. Whether it's her like slowly downfalling with the relationship with her therapist husband played by Bill Murray, or if it's just like her family. The whole ending scene at the wedding was hilarious. when it just goes wrong.
Mhm.
And their dog gets crushed by the or something happens to an animal. I forget what happens, but I'm pretty sure it's their dog gets crushed by something like that. But it's a fairly funny but dark film. And I think it really executes the whole story of family meeting up after a while and family drama incurring for an hour and 40 minutes.
Definitely. Top 2, whew. Number 2, I didn't mention this yet, so I'm going with Isle of Dogs. I guess I like this movie much more than you. Like, you liked French Dispatch much more, and that's perfectly fine. Uh, Again, great animation, stop motion, and maybe just a little bit less good than Fantastic Fox. It just doesn't pop as much, but still really well made.
Because Fantastic Mr. Fox has that like orange yellow color
Yeah,
palette.
it's so great. We'll get to that. But I love dogs. Definitely is pro dog, not pro cat. So cat lovers, you may not want to watch this movie.
Even though they don't make fun of cats.
No, but yeah, it has an interesting Japanese backdrop setting. The like we said, the Atari, the kid, seemed more mature than
Yeah.
the adults again, but he has his moments, like that one moment where he finds that slide or whatever, and he wants to go on it, and the dog's like, "No," but he doesn't listen. I think Chief has a great character arc throughout
That's
here, the
Bryan
main dog.
Cranston, right?
Yeah, Bryan
Yeah.
Cranston's character. I was hoping we would get more of all the dogs because I was enjoying them all together, but the story kind of focuses more on him after the first act. But yeah, they do a really good job with him, how he's like a stray and he finally gets his family in the end and everything. So yeah, just another lighthearted, sweet film with some cool animation moments. Ripping the ear off the dog was pretty crazy. We had the tail off the fox, and then we got the ear off the dog in this one. But
He
yeah, I
definitely
did.
likes random animal body parts.
Yeah, acts of violence. But yeah, it's really well done. I like the story of this island, trash island. I felt like that. I thought it was going to be like a take
How
on
all
Garbage
every
Island.
single dog was on that island.
Yeah, and they all have this virus, the sickness, and this coming out before the pandemic just made it even more unique, because there's so many virus type movies out nowadays. So yeah, I just really enjoyed Isle of Dogs, I guess.
Alright, well, kicking off my top two. This was one of the hardest top twos ever because he has two extremely strong films, in my opinion. But number two is Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's not a bad film at all. Honestly, I think this film is perfect. Um, it tells such an interesting story for a kids movie. And I know me and you were talking about this before, but the movie applies to every single audience. Like,
Mhm.
you can ask an adult, an old person, and a kid, and I would say they could probably all love it.
Right.
Um, the story of this fox heist film with also this like Thanksgiving fall setting to the film just really helps it. Which coincidentally we're recording this in November, so it's kind of perfect to be talking about this movie. Um, but it's very entertaining. It's less than 90 minutes and it feels like 30 minutes with the way it flies
Mhm.
by. Um, the character, my personal favorite character is Christopherson Fox. The way he's so perfect, but and also he feels bad for everyone else because he feels like he's getting too much attention
Mhm.
is so interesting. I love the like overwhelming sport, the one where you have to like hit the acorn, go over
Yeah,
the thing, and like when I was rewatching that scene earlier this month, I was like, how could someone write this?
really, yeah.
I don't. It's so interesting. I also really like how this film. One thing that they did while making this was they had the actors actually go outside and record their lines. Like there's footage of George Clooney rolling around and then saying his lines because Wes wanted to make it the most like realistic.
Authentic.
The eating in this film, there's one scene in particular where it's just this like heist at the beginning and then it goes I'm pregnant and then it cuts to this house and they're all it's like I think it's like 9 fox years later. which is like 2 years in real life. um, but they basically had, I think the kid's name is Ash Fox. And he was such an interesting character to follow. His jealousy and his like how he always wanted to be attention, how he always
Right.
wanted attention was so interesting. And while our basically other main kid character in this movie was Christopherson, who's such a different character from Ash, is just so interesting. But back to what I was saying, there's the eating in this movie is like insanely good, especially for stop motion.
Right.
Um, the stop motion in this film looks phenomenal. The color palette does. I love the whole ending thing. Where they're having to save Christopherson, and then they're on the little motorbike, and the little weasel is like, "Don't turn around," and then he stops the bike, and they look, and there's a wolf.
Yeah.
The weasel character is really funny, and I like all the
Mhm.
scenes where he basically just zones out, and he's like, "Can you give me a sign whenever you're gonna do that?" And he just
Yeah.
sticks up his hand. Um, I really one of the funniest parts about this movie, which is probably better than any cussing in a movie, is how this is a kids movie, and so instead of cussing, they say, "What the cuss? Are you cussing serious?" And it's hilarious. It adds on to the already comedic factor to this film. But Fantastic Mr. Fox is a masterpiece, but I do prefer one film over this.
Yeah, I gave it it's my number 1, obviously. I gave it a 9 out of 10, but that was only my first time watch, and I feel like on rewatch, this will become a masterpiece,
It
10 out of 10.
it I've seen it 3 times in total, and it has gotten better each time.
Yeah, the like I said, the animation, the colors, though you can see like the wind in their hair. It's just
Yeah.
so well done, man. And apparently there is only one little scene in this film with CGI. The rest is all practically done. And
What
that's
was the one scene?
when they flood underground. I guess that was done
Oh,
digitally. But that's the only thing, which is pretty impressive, like visually stunning. This movie has the best pacing out of all of these movies. It just flies by, like you said. Felt like a half hour instead of an hour and a half or whatever it was. Great voice casting. George Clooney, wasn't expecting to see him in here, but he actually does a really good job as our main lead. The weasel or possum or whatever you're talking about, the side character, he is
yeah.
hilarious. I laughed so many times when he's trying to bite the chicken's necks and he can't. He's like,
Yes.
my teeth
My
aren't the
teeth
same.
aren't the same as yours.
So many great comedic moments throughout this entire film. They're spaced really well, so it's like every 5 minutes or so.
I love the scene where they're in the little like apple cider thing, and he has to tie himself up like he's a bottle, and she's like, "Ha, he only needs two," and puts the one back. I
Yeah,
also think Willem Dafoe is great as the rat.
yeah, true. Like I said, the voice casting is phenomenal in this film. It just moves so quick, has great characters. I enjoyed every character. I like how Mr. Fox, how he needs to find this balance between being mature and proper and everything and being a wild animal. He can't quite find that balance, and he starts going too much towards the wild animal thing with these heists and that, right? And that's all he has to do. That's what his wife tells him at the end. You have to find that balance in between. I thought it was this great message. Uh, just yeah, just a great movie, great characters. Uh, I was so surprised by this. I did not expect this to be this good, and I was just floored by it by the end. I was really surprised. It worked on every level, musically, visually, and
The
emotionally, everything.
score to this film is so good.
It is. It is so great. And
If
way better than it needs to be.
for a kids movie, they went all out.
Mhm. And yeah,
Um,
you pretty much nailed it with the kid characters and everything. So yeah, I love this movie.
but if you've been marking down my ranking at least, my number one is Grand Budapest Hotel. As I said, this was extremely hard picking between Budapest Hotel and Mr. Fox. Honestly, Mr. Fox could probably change in like an hour, but at
Right.
this current moment in time, I think Budapest Hotel is better. First of all, the set design in this movie is insane. I'm not sure if you saw the behind the scenes, but the actual hotel and all the actual sets was made in claymation.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it was, and if it wasn't made in claymation, then it was miniaturized.
Yeah, I do know that there was some miniatures. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the story that this movie tells is so unique and different from all of his other films. I love all the scenes in the hotel. The scenes with Ralph Fiennes and the bellboy are hilarious. And very funny. It surprisingly holds up 10 years later because this film did turn 10 years old this year. Which Mr. Fox turned 15 years old this year. Um, but yeah, I think it's highly entertaining. I I ordered the Criterion Blu-ray since it's the 20% off sale, and I wanted to get something, and this has been a wish list pickup for a while, and so I picked that up. And so
nice.
eventually when it comes, I'll watch it again and I'll see if my ranking still has this as number one or if it's Mr. Fox as number one. But at current moment in time, this is my number one. I think it is just very entertaining. The colors are phenomenal, and unlike Asteroid City, I think this film isn't more colors over the plot, and they
Right.
balance the two very well.
Hmm.
I think Ralph Fiennes is great. Edward Norton makes
Oh, lost you there.
job. The
Nope.
bellboy is hilarious. And overall, it's just a great film that is my personal favorite Wes Anderson film.
One thing I forgot to mention about the Grand Budapest is William Dafoe's character, how he's like this hitman or whatever, the muscle of the
Oh yeah,
family.
I completely forgot
He's
about
he's
that.
so damn good as this character too. When he cuts off the guy's fingers at the door.
Shockingly violent.
Yeah, certain scenes. But yeah, definitely one. Like I said, I could see myself this and Royal Tenenbaums going up, perhaps past Bottle Rocket, perhaps all the way up to Isle of Dogs. Over time. But these
Seems
were all
like you
just
like his
first time
stop
watches.
motion films better,
Yeah, well,
with them being your top two.
they're definitely the two movies that probably flowed the best. Moonrise Kingdom too flowed pretty well. I feel like pacing wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was definitely fun. It was a great experience. I definitely understand the appeal, why people love him. I get it. um, it took me a while to get it though. It took me a couple movies to understand what was
What movie
how.
did you start feeling is like that you actually started understanding?
Well, yeah, I really started to notice it on the Royal Tenenbaums, and as I was going from there, it was just getting more and more prominent. Right, his
You watched
style.
them chronologically, right?
Yep, I watched them all in order, which I don't always do, but I did do it for this time. I want to see the progress over time.
Yeah, I watched it all mixed match.
All over. Yeah, so this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on, Film Kid.
Yep.
Like I said, the link for his channel is in the description of this video. You got anything coming up on your channel that you want to mention, or
Uh, I have a I mean, now that we just finished doing this, might do a Wes Anderson shorts ranking on the Henry Sugar, Poison, Ratcatcher, and the Swan. So that might be coming soon. Have a couple more directors rankings for the end of the month. Um, but yeah, that's basically all I had planned.
cool? And as for me, I'm gonna do A Quiet Place for sure. That trilogy. And
Great
from
trilogy.
within here to the end of December, I will squeeze in the 7 classic Dracula movies and the Phantasm franchise as well. I wanted to tackle all the King Kong movies, but I don't know if I'll
There's
have enough
so many.
time. There's 10. Um, and I've seen half of them already, so that one's not too bad. But so if I got time, I'll do that. But in December, the next Ranker Live episode 3 will be on the Harry Potter franchise. So yeah, I have that to go through as well. So I don't know if I'll have time to do all this, but I'll do my best. Definitely get into A Quiet Place next, that trilogy. I still have yet to see Day One, the newest
That
film.
was
So
a good film.
that should be interesting to get into. So that's what I got coming up. And you have anything else to add?
Nope.
All right, so that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you sub to the Film Kid over there. And that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, thanks for watching.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on here.
No problem. I can't end the stream. Oh, there